For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. And he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds will he repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense, so shall they fear the name of the Lord. From the west in his glory, from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood. The Spirit of the Lord shall raise a standard against him, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Excuse me. We're continuing Isaiah chapter 32 today, and we were just getting into the fourth verse. We ran out of time. The heart of the let's pick up the context a little bit. God promises deliverance from the. Where's that camera guy? Just jump up. God promises deliverance from the Assyrian, as he promises us deliverance from all the enemies, from the last enemy, which is death. And then from that, he promises the restoration of the kingdom. A king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. We talked a lot about that. A man being a hiding place from the wind. How a man who rules ought to be. Not a human, but a man. We talked about Ish, the difference between Ish and Adam. The difference between a human and a man. Yeah. And Isha would be like, woman. All right. Because it does, that's a bit of just my way of looking at it. So we talked about shadow of the great rock. Yeah, sure. The eyes of them that shall see. Shadow of a great rock also reminds me of how in the book of Revelation it says, the sun shall not smite them anymore. Neither shall the heat. Well, the heat of the sun shall not smite them, and they have no need of the light. For the Lord God gives them light. Sorry, mate. Nose is itchy. And the eyes of them that see shall not be dim. I'm just trying to make sure I have a something. If I feel like I got a potential of a sneeze here working up. Hold on 1 second here. Maybe not. All right. So then in verse 3. He talks about the eyes of them that see shall not be dim. You know, it says in the New Testament that we see through a glass darkly, but then we shall see clearly face to face. Because we see in part, we know in part. That's when I was talking about the will of God the other day. So you don't know God's will? It's like, well, I know God's will, but I see in part and I know in part. You know, I know he wants us to walk righteously. It's not always obvious to me, at least intellectually, what that means. The Holy Spirit is often your guide because you may not intellectually know the right thing, but hopefully, if we don't understand the right, the Spirit will show you the right. We know in part, we understand in part, but then we shall completely understand. As it says that we will know him even as we are known of him, which is pretty astounding. And that maybe is a little bit of hyperbole because I just can never anticipate. I don't know. Maybe it is inherent in the human, form to be able to take on such divine. I mean, it says we will inherit the divine nature, and what that means, well, I would like to find out. I would like to hang around and find out. So we don't know everything. Even we who hear and have eyes to see. Right? But that also is a reference to the fact that some do not have eyes to see, some do not have ears to hear. In this world today, blindness has happened. I almost played the part of the song from chapter 29, where it says, "The Lord has poured upon you the spirit of deep sleep." Because men's hearts are turned away from God, God does not have any obligation to turn them back. In fact, He can choose to allow their delusions to become thicker and thicker. Because He's not obligated to us. But He gives us good things. All share of these good things that God gives us. It rains on the just and the unjust. We all come into this world equipped with a body, for better or worse. And what we do with that body. It was funny because I was getting ready this morning in the bathroom, and I wasn't whatever, but I was thinking about the things done in the body, and what was it? What was it? I wonder what spurred it on. It was something, I don't know, but I thought of there was some person. Oh yes. Well, I was thinking about actually issues having to do with people who, mutilate themselves, let's say, in various ways. The extreme mutilations we see where people change out their genitals and stuff. Yes, that's that's like an extreme version of ear piercing in my mind. Like, in a sense, because it's like you're mutilating yourself. I had a pierced ear in high school, and it's no big deal, but I would rather I hadn't, I would rather I hadn't. And the same thing with tattoos all over your body. It's like, I don't know. It's sort of like you get a textbook at school and you just doodle all over it. Some people like to doodle, But on some level, if you don't also know the Lord, that'll also be against you. It's a funny thing, because if you know the Lord, all is forgiven. Even the little silly things. Do I think it's a sin? Well, not really. No. Tattoos I don't think of that as really a sin. But it did say to the Israelites, they were forbidden from printing marks in their body. I don't think that's an Old Testament law, so that's passed away as far as I'm concerned, because the Gentiles have other customs. They do print marks in their bodies and stuff. That's what the heathen do. And to the extent that it isn't some sort of pagan religious symbolism, after one becomes a Christian, certainly should never get anything like that. And probably advisably none at all. But I've seen guys who had tattoos they didn't like, and so they covered them over with big crosses and stuff. And hey, that's because I would rather that. Definitely, I understand. But my point is, there was a sense in which I thought of having to come to the end of my life and account for myself, and what did I do with this thing? How did I use it? We all use it. We get up in the morning, we go to work, we come home from work, we do other work maybe, or just what? Watch the TV, go to bed, and go back to work. Just hand to mouth. There has to be something more, and we should open our eyes to it. Because we do have time and opportunity to seek God, and we should. So this is the verse where we're on the heart of the we read through the whole chapter, not the whole chapter. We read up to the women. I'm going to read verses 4 through 8 again, just so we get the context from this point forward, and then we'll talk about the details. The heart also of the rash shall understand knowledge, and the tongue of the stammerer shall be ready to speak plainly. The vile person shall no more be called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. For the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, and to utter error against the Lord, to make... wait a second. I'm going to read it a little more. The vile person shall no more be called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. For the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, and to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry. he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. The instruments also of the churl are evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaketh right. But the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things shall he stand. And then comes the women that are ease. A change in subject for sure right there. So we need to look at some of these words because I want to know what the Hebrew is, because some of these English words, because when I do not have confidence in the English word, meaning one, it is not a word that we use. We don't use churl a lot. A churl. I think I believe it. Well, I think I know what I believe it means. Someone who's grasping. At least I think that's the Hebrew, because I don't know. I mean, we can just look up the word churl on the internet. I try to avoid saying on Google, because actually I am. Well, we are on their platform right now. All right, where's my browse internet? Yeah. So, first of all, let's see. The rash. Mahar, to hasten, it says. 41:16. We're not going to bring up the big thing. That's good enough for me. The hasty. That's totally fine. The tongue of the stammer, because then rash, because I'm just looking at them like rash is a good enough translation. I don't need to get all specific on that word. I just want to, that's the main thing. But the other ones, stammerers, yeah, to speak inarticulately, or to speak plainly, cleanly, clearly. The vile person, okay. The Nabal. Nabal. I think I remember this. Someone did something with Nabal. Wasn't Nabal... I'm going to look it up in a second here. Churl. Okay, there we go. So, because there's a bit about this Nabal. We'll look at the usages. From Nabal, stupid, wicked, especially impious, according to Strong. Foolish, foolish man, foolish woman, vile person. So vile and fool, like in English, vile is very different from fool. I mean, a fool could be vile, but vile is very specific. You can always be, there are all kinds of fools. Old fool, young fool, whatever. Fool is a broader category. You see what I'm saying? It's like you could mean anything. You kind of mean, it has more to do with, if I say someone's a fool, what I mean, at least in modern English, I mean somehow they kind of don't see something, or, you know what I mean, like they're missing something, or somehow it's like a sense of stupidity and obliviousness to that fact. So foolish people and unwise. That's right, Deuteronomy 32. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Yeah, I translated that wicked when I did the Song of Moses. Fool, vile. Should Abner die as a fool dies? Interesting. Well, because he was going to die in undignified, because they I believe, well, yeah, let me see. Abner was like the general of Saul, I believe, and David wanted to spare him, but oh well, we're not going to go into 2 Samuel and all that history. Let's stick with where we are, Paul. Come on. Oh, why it just closed all three of those tabs instantly. That's great. That's all right. Trill can be brought up again. I wasn't done with Nabal. Let's wait. We see here Job of the foolish women. Foolish. No, wait. So when I click on that, it takes me to Biblos Lexicon, which I don't want. And if I open up this one, will it give me like that passage? Yeah, it does. Okay, good. Job 2:10. I just want to see the context. Okay, then said his wife unto him, Dost thou retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. Because that's what I said. Job, I've said this, I reference this a lot about Job. God gives us both good. God might send evil. I mean, he sent the cross for Jesus. And if you don't understand how that is evil, it is would you like to be crucified? Would you consider that a blessing? You could, if you get to the point spiritually, like Peter, you can understand with what death you might glorify God. Being crucified, just like the Lord. Peter was crucified upside down because he wasn't worthy. But I don't much fancy being crucified at all, but that would be an honor. And it would be evil. Not that God would be evil for doing it to me, but it would be an evil that would befall me in the world that I would stand up to against, or that would wash over me before my death, but the Lord would bring me back, so I will not fear. So that's a good example of what Dr. Strong was saying when he was saying, especially impiety. Foolishness, but a specific kind of foolishness. Curse God and die. I see why they translate it vile person too. Talked about all Job's blessings. It seems like his wife was one area where God shorted him. I'm sorry. Right? Because I know one thing, my wife would never say something like that to me. Not under any circumstances. You know what I mean? It just seems like, it makes the story seem a little funny to me, I don't know. Let's go back to Nabal. Oh, okay. Okay, Nabal also. So that's a good example of one. Now, see, thou shalt be as one of the fools. Let's look at and see, because this is how you can determine what words mean or how you should feel about them by looking at them in context. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. I just want the King James. And I want verse 33. No, not that one. I lost the one I wanted. As one of, okay, thou shalt be as one of the fools. I don't know about the fool's death. I don't think that's going to be very helpful. Because when he says that, it's like he already knows. He expects you to already know what that looks like. But, you don't always get, like in Job, that's a nice, good, Job 2, that's a nice, good context there of what is meant by, that's how foolish women talk. Meaning Nabal. Foolish. There are other words for fool, by the way, so that's why. This is not the only word. In fact, you'll notice, let's see. If we look at the uses of this, it's a pretty common word, but notice that it only occurs 18 times. And look at the Proverbs. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 3. This is used 3 times in Proverbs. And if you know anything about Proverbs, you know the word fool comes up a couple hundred times. As far as the fool this, the fool that. Maybe not a couple hundred, but maybe 100 times. At least in English. If you look it up, fool, Proverbs is going to have a nice big log of stuff about fools. I mean, maybe I've gone over the board with 100 even, but whatever. It's more than 3. I guarantee you that. Guarantee you that. Right? Everyone, right? The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. And that's not even here. And that would have been a good one, because that would make me see impiety. You know what I mean? And there are only 3 in the Proverbs. using this word. It's a particular kind of fool. Did I miss the verse we were on here? I thought it said 33 of 2 Samuel 3:33. Oh, it's 13:13. Sorry, okay. Look at the wrong spot. Boy, there we go. Name my brother. Okay. All right. This is when Amnon. I almost said Absalom, but I forgot there was another older brother. Amnon and Tamar. Amnon fell in love with his sister and forced her. He played sick and made her bring food and stuff. And he asked her, he tried to get her to, he said, don't force me. She said, no. He said, don't force me. Do not this folly. And whither shall I cause my shame to go? It's going to be embarrassing for her forever. And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now, therefore, talk to the king. And then he forced her anyways. She said, talk to the king and get permission first. Because he would probably give it to him anyway, if, that's what she says. Anyway, so Amnon hated her afterwards and stuff. But so, when she says, you'll be as one of the fools, you see there, it's like a different kind of fool. Like the fool who raped his sister. Or it's a half sister, I believe, also. So he could, whatever. But it's not just it's like he did that mean thing to her. You know what I mean? Like in a moment of lust, he did something so utterly self-destructive to him and also to other people. To her, it would be, I forget what happened. Did she commit suicide? Absalom's the one who takes revenge. No, she just... I forget what happens. She remains desolate in his house, and I don't remember what happens to her after that. But Absalom takes revenge, and he gets in trouble. But he comes back, and that's when he's the one who eventually deposes David. Temporarily. His own son. So... anyways, here we go. So that's another example of what they mean by fool here. There's a sort of moral folly. But like... there's something sort of despicable in this kind of fool. Notice the one's like, curse God and die. And he's like, come here and sleep with me. There's a certain kind of wanton disregard. Like, sort of, hey, it's kind of stupid to curse God at like a critical moment. Just like, it's kind of like, maybe you shouldn't, at that moment, do that rape. There's this wanton disregard of consequences, but also just for the mere satisfaction of oneself. So that's what we're going to look at, is when we say fool here, that's kind of what we'll leave it vile person, but that's what it means. It's kind of a fool in the vile, in a sort of vile way. So, like in the sense of impiety, lack of, because there's something, lack of any boundary to like, oh, I can't do that to my sister. It's like I said, there's no fear of God. It doesn't say that, but it seems like the kind of fool who fears not God. But there's some sort of, there's other words for it too. So, I wonder if from Nabal, I wonder if Nabal that it comes from is the word, where it occurs a gazillion times. It occurs quite a bit, I'll tell you that. 25, not that many. And I don't see a lot of proverbs here either. So yeah, there's one. foolishly. Okay, whatever. So that'll stand for our... And then we just want to look vile person. And then we need to look at... sorry, this is a little boring, but... Well, this is part study, you know. Vile person, liberal. And churl. Bountiful. I'm not going to do a word set in every word in this chapter, don't worry, but we've got to look at this. Shoah. Interesting. And they, okay. Nadib. A rascal? Really? What was that? The churl? I'm going to check this again. The churl. Let's make sure I get this right. Oh, kile or kile. Definition: a rascal. A rascal? Rogue. Only used twice, so we don't get a lot of look-see at this one. Both in Isaiah, both in this chapter. So this one, yeah, this was kile. Strong. This is my impression. Is, like I said, grasping. Churl from cool in the sense of withholding. Niggardly. Now notice the spelling. That's A-R-D-L-Y. Someone got in trouble for that. They thought they were saying... I was going to say the N-word, but I'm not going to. Alright. And so, because unless people get offended at the mere mention of a word. And unless I put it on a recording, you know... Whatever. Personally, it would have been better to just say it. Okay, so cool. Let's see what that is. The word it comes from. To contain. Interesting. Holding. Yeah, I think that's why I got the idea of grasping, containing. In the sense of withholding. I guess it depends. I mean, they say rascal. Rascal is a terrible translation. Rogue would be better. But I like to think of this is much more broadly. Now, let me just check this. Alright. Vile person is Nabal. Villainy is Nabla. Interesting. Alright. So the vile... Let's go back to just the text now that we have our... That's interesting. And senseless disgrace. Okay. Kile, we don't need this. Nadib... The noble, that's generous, inclined, generous, noble. It means, from properly voluntary, generous, magnanimous, find. We understand that. That's the liberal, the true meaning of it. Shoah. This is a little different. Bountiful. Okay, Shoah. That threw me off, but they're like, no. The Holocaust is Shoah. This is Shoah. So whatever. I don't know. This means something totally different. It means from Shava in the sense of freedom, a noble, liberal, opulent, bountiful, etc. All right, that's all the Hebrew we need, I believe. I don't like to do that. All right, let's go back to our text. All right. So the crud. Let's just tackle this. I'll look back at for a moment. The vile person shall no more be called liberal. That means, like we said, we don't need to go... Well, I quickly read over it, but that meant like... generous, noble, or liberal. You know what I mean? And I think that is kind of... We get that. When I read it the other day, I just sort of laughed. I'm like, we call vile people liberals. That's gonna stop. it's interesting because some people feel that way. They feel like, hey, I'm not with all those people over there. That's not liberalism. Liberalism is this belief that everyone should have the right to speak and we should be free, and, you know, in the classical sense. Or it means liberalism, we want to provide for the poor and make sure, give everyone a hand up and make sure nobody goes without health insurance. And we, and that's just, we just want to make sure people don't fall through the cracks in society and that people who have trouble are taken care of. And we just want to be liberal in that way. But then it becomes anything goes. Curse God and die. Lay with your sister. It's all permissible because you're liberal. I'm liberal, man, whatever. Do whatever you want. That's not really liberalism. Do whatever you want. People think freedom, do whatever I want. They confuse the idea of liberty with license to just do whatever they will. And that's not what liberty and freedom and liberality should be about. They portray it as noble. Because that's another one of the meanings of this word for liberal, noble. There's a noble thing. We want everyone to be included, everyone to be welcomed, regardless of any, and then not noticing that as you welcome in people who, the more and more bizarre forms of deviancy and wickedness, the people who were supposed to be protected from deviance and wickedness, such as children, the deviants, now through your nobility and your liberality, are taking access to the children and corrupting them. That's what the vile are. They appear to be liberal because they say curse God and die. Hey, you see a woman you want to sleep with? Go for it. Do it. Well, you sure allow a lot. Yeah, I'm liberal. I want what's best for people. I want you to be happy. Do as you please. But what about that person he's hurting? Oops. Because you know why? Because no forethought is given. They don't take responsibility for the consequences of their actions. Like I said with the example with Amnon. His sister Tamar, he doesn't. He just wants her. He doesn't even consider about what's going to happen next. And of course, then he hates her. Free love has a price. Now, the churl said to be bountiful. Well, that's why I like they did. Churl, it's not thief, but they said rogue. But to me, it's like a person, well, like it says, it's container, grasping. It sounds like someone who has like some sort of, I was thinking like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, like a stash, because it's had container in it. I'm probably totally off track on the language there, but let's just put it this way. We'll understand the churl by the context here. A churl is some sort of evil person who the world thinks is bountiful. Like when people look at the millionaires and billionaires and they say, wow, they're so rich. They have so much. Plenty. That was that word Shoah. That said, what was it? Actually, I have it over here. I'm not going to bring it up. But it was independent, noble in station, or in the original sense of freedom, opulence. It's a different word than the other one. Let's see. Wow. This is where I just noticed this. Here, I'm going to bring you over here again just to show you this because it's kind of interesting. I was looking at the this definition. I'm like, okay, let's look at the Englishman's Concordance for this word Shoah, which again is bountiful. Nor regard the rich above the poor, nor regard the rich. That's Job. God is no respecter of persons. He doesn't regard the rich more than the poor. That's one of the important things you should know. If God feels that way, that's how we should feel, by the way. This was an ancient thing understood by people. It pisses me off when people speak evil of the Bible, not having known it. And then they talk about what an awful book Job is. Utter fools. No idea what they're talking about. Utter fools. I was going to say, what verse was that? 19. How much let's see. Is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked, and to princes, ye are ungodly? How much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, for they are all the work of his hands. So in that context, wow, rich really means rich, bountiful. And poor there meant lean, yeah. So, what's weird, though, is it's listed here in the Strong's show as here, Isaiah 22, of breaking down the walls and of crying to the mountains, talking about the day of the Lord. And I didn't look at that because I always assumed the word crying there bountiful. It's translated in the King James, bountiful, crying, and rich. I just don't understand that crying thing. And now I'm looking back at Isaiah 22. Just because, really? 22 verse 5? For it is a day of trouble, of treading down, of perplexity, of the Lord of hosts' valley of vision, breaking down the walls, crying to the mountains. They were just like... And how much would I bet that is an example, possibly, of a textual corruption? It probably should be crying, and somebody left the wrong mark there on the thing, and it got screwed up. So, because they just were like, no, it's crying. It's not bountiful to the mountains. Whatever. Well, I'll leave that sorting out to actual scholars. For our purposes, I think bountiful is our word. So, sometimes when someone's a thief, like they're a gangster and they have money. I mean, they are bountiful, right? We have, I'm thinking of like a rogue character. I'm thinking of like Al Capone, oh, he is bountiful. But then you're also thinking about just your standard rogues, your millionaires and billionaires. Not that there's anything wrong with being a millionaire. I'm just saying, but among them, there are those who are said to be bountiful, but, who are said to be rich, but are not rich. And because they may be rich in the riches of the world, but not rich towards God. And when God's kingdom is established, churls aren't going to be looked at as bountiful people. Especially, I was about to say, I don't like talking about money, but I do, as you know. I love to talk about money. You can tell by how I talk about it all the time. Money, money, money. And some people, money is just, man, that is a thing, man. They love to pile it up in big piles and put it away. And for the future. Okay. Hopefully, it would be weird to die and leave a lot of money laying around. Some people, that's their goal. To me, it's like, you mean I didn't take responsibility for... it's one thing to leave it to your children. Like to leave something for them, obviously. I want to leave my children an inheritance, but, certainly not, I don't know. I feel like there's a certain level at which that's a good inheritance for you to start your life, and you can make well with that. But like, it seems to me that like, some people, they try really hard to use up their money before they die. They want to have all the fun they can have. They want to spend it and live their life. And I can understand that. That makes a bit more sense. I always had a bit more sympathy for hedonism because it makes sense. You go and seek your pleasure. The idea of just working your tail off just to pile up money for, just so you feel good. So when you die, there's a couple billion around or whatever. Are those people truly rich? Do they even get to have their money and enjoy it? Do they really have that money? Ever? You know what I mean? Or are they just like pack rats, just packing away things they have no use for and never will? I don't know. That's a lot of it is interesting. I mean, in the meantime, they build things. And here's the thing. I'm not talking... the pursuit of money is a great driver in society of the economy and stuff. I mean, it's an important thing. It's what, it kind of makes the world go round a bit. And it's all right because a lot of what people are pursuing is just their livelihood. And in pursuing better income, you're not necessarily being greedy. You're just trying to, well, at least for my money, like, I want to earn more so I can exchange that. I want to earn more in the time I'm working. Be more efficient, or actually what they say, productive. I want to have greater productivity in the time I'm working so that the time I'm not working can be more easily filled with the other important things I want to do. I still do my own oil changes and stuff like that. I can't imagine that changing, honestly, even if I had the money. Because, not the money. I mean, I have money for an oil change. But I can't bring myself to spend it. Because I can do it in the same 15 minutes. And then I wouldn't be sitting around in an office. And there are some things that go in, so when I say my own oil changes, it's just an analogy for a lot of little things that perhaps could be taken care of otherwise. But that would be a good reason to want more money. So you have more time to serve the Lord. But for some reason, people just love people who have lots of money. And they like to see them, spend it on themselves, surely. For the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, and to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. The vile person speak villainy. The word is actually... here, I'll show you the word for villainy. It's Nibala. Sounds a lot like Nabal. Does it come from it? From Nabal, foolishness. So the word we have there for the vile person, this word villainy, is a perfect in context translation, meaning they said vile and then they used villainy, because that is a perfect, at least in context, you got it right, meaning they had two words that were related to each other, and they chose the two English words that were also related to each other. Like if in another translation, such as the ones that say rogue, it says the rogue will behave roguishly. That's what you do. Or the, what was it? The rascal shall behave rascally. The rascal will do rascallion, whatever. I'm not sure what the, will do his rascal thing. What they said instead of rascal, the rogue speaks nonsense. For a fool nonsense speaks in his heart. I don't know if it's nonsense, but it's whatever Nabal means. It's the adjective, or no, I'm sorry. What adjective? Whatever. It's the depersonified one. It's like, there's a fool and there's also foolishness, and that's what Nabal. That it should say the right way to translate. If you translate it fool, you have to say the fool will speak foolishness. The rogue will speak roguishly. But I like the vile person will speak villainy, because vile person is actually, in this case, a very good, or let's say a very decent translation, even though it's not entirely clear how they are vile. It's a little more, it says something about it a little more. And you can see also the implications of impiety, meaning lack of respect towards things, well, of God and religion in general. They speak villainy. They speak their vile things. You think of Job's wife. Curse God and die. And also Amnon to his sister Tamar, the vile things he spoke to her. His heart will work iniquity to practice hypocrisy. I wonder what hypocrisy means in this context. We can't not look that up. It's not going to be hypocrites, because that's the Greek word. And that always throws me off, because I'm so used to thinking it in the terms of the Greek. When I see it in the Old Testament, I'm like, okay, what's the real word? Because I doubt it means something exactly like our English hypocrisy. And in fact, it doesn't. It's chonef. And it means profaneness. Profane comes from Latin, which means far from the temple. Outside the temple. So, and again, according to strong moral filth or profanity. It is profanity. So, the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity to practice profanity. Interesting. Well, because it doesn't necessarily mean, like, we think of profanity, we're like, okay, bad language. But there's actually not just there's profanity of action. Like, the examples we used, Job's wife and David's son Amnon, both examples of people who practiced profanity. Because your words, because on some level, your words are portending some action. To utter error against the Lord, that could be very close to what we saw in Job, right? And also, again, in Tamar and her brother's incident, because that also, rape is a crime in the Old Testament. It was one for which the death penalty was instituted. So, and to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry, and who will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. Because when you listen to people like this, who know not God, respect not God, vile people, profane people. When I say I was a bit of a profane person, not in this sense. I was never impious. I was profane. Maybe I was a bit irreverent of conventions. I still am a bit of... I'm certainly irreverent towards human conventionality. Meaning that whatever the conventional wisdom is, I feel a lack of respect for it. Just out of the box. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical. Even right now, like everyone in the world is saying, get your kids out of school. I'm sending my daughter to school this year. Yeah, because I've raised my kids 18 years, homeschooling, and in the time when everyone's just screaming how we all got to get out of school, that's about when I start. That's when I wander in. And stick something into that system. I'm not sending a child anyways. I'm sending something a little different. So, but that's my point. It's like, what's my point? Well, we're working. Make empty the soul. I said that had nothing to do with this part here. Weird noise. The soul of the hungry being empty, and the drink of the thirsty shall fail. Now, remember, we're still talking about that is what that person does. But in God's kingdom, it will not be so. But this is how it has been. Remember, we're still in the context of the good things that's going to happen. But we're going to say that which used to be with the vile person and the churl is going to be reversed. But this is how it has been. The vile speak villainy, their heart work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, profanity, to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry. And he will cause the drink of the thirsty fail. We're like in chapter, there's a lot of eating and drinking analogies in the Bible. And one of the easiest ways to understand this is Jesus said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." And because bread is an analogy for the Word of God, because it feeds us in that sense. It feeds our souls in that it informs us and makes us privy to God's will. It opens our minds to the Lord also and turns our hearts towards Him. And when we fill ourselves up with God's Word and stuff, it has a good, wholesome effect on us in improving us and making us grow stronger and grow up into Christ, as it is said in the New Testament we ought to. Drink also. We talked about Jesus in John chapter 4 with the woman at the well, talking about the well of water springing up into everlasting life that you could have inside of you if you would recognize the Lord Jesus for who He is. And so the behavior of vile people causes people to be empty, meaning if you give heed to them, especially when they're in positions of power. You know, like in the media and stuff, when we have a lot of vile people. And people watch their empty programming of them snickering and snacking, and whatever, about whatever. And they go away unfilled, empty, probably deceived, and absolutely ill-served. You put vile people in charge of sort of the spiritual feeding of people. You get spiritually malnourished, spiritually starving people. The instruments of the churl are evil. He's the one. Now the churl was the one that was like the bandit, whatever. The bandit or the not bandit. The rogue, the rascal. Oh, that's right. Vile person wasn't rogue or rascal. Sorry, I got that wrong. That was foolishly. Yeah. But if it was rogue, we would speak roguishly. The instruments of the churl are evil. The things he uses, instruments, is going to be. I think I looked this word up a long time ago, and I'm like, yeah, it just means stuff. Yeah, utensil. It's like article, a utensil, or a vessel. Instrument. Yeah, perfectly fine translation. And not musical instruments, just like instruments. Like, this is an instrument. 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 Those are all instruments in this sense, okay? Devices, tools, objects one uses, the things one puts to work on your behalf. It's funny, they talk about instruments. There's a way in which I heard that word used in my life within the past decade that was new to me. It was in the term financial instruments, and they were talking about the subprime mortgage crisis. And they had created these instruments. You know what I mean? That's what they called them, instruments. And of course, because there are things that have been put together to do things, right? Well, when someone is a churl, their instruments are evil. Because a churl, I got to tell you, as someone who seems to be bountiful, it's not just rich. The churl is a sort of crooked. I remember Arnold Murray used to always talk about the difference between ill-gotten gains and stuff, my former teacher. And that's definitely a good point here, especially when we're talking about churls. Because churls are people who are bountiful, but by evil means, for sure, because they're being described, like I said, they thought it was a rascal or a rogue, so some sort of criminal implication, or unrighteous, maybe not technically criminal in the American justice system sense, or maybe they get away with it or whatever, but in a certain sense that it's either criminal or almost criminal, the way they operate. I do think of, when I talk about that, I didn't bring up the subprime mortgage thing for nothing. I mean, bankers, especially these investment bankers, can very much be churls. They devise wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words. They promise all kinds of things, blah, 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 but they end up ruining them financially. They plunder the poor. That's honestly what's going on in our country. All those trillions of dollars spent, very little went to people. Not that it should have been done. Not that we shouldn't have shut down our economy. It was ridiculous. So, but it was a serious pandemic. Look at, if I get cancer, I don't just start knifing myself in the face. Like just some sort of moron. You know what I mean? I've got cancer. Duh, duh, duh. That's not how you respond. Well, I have to do something. I've got cancer. I got to do something about it, right? So I better knife myself in the face. I got cancer. I'm panicking. That's what it is. It was a panicked response. The whole damn thing panicked. And at the beginning, it made a little sense. Like I said, the first few weeks, 2 weeks to slow the spread. Okay, till we see what's going on. Then we see what's going on. It's like, no. They just kept going because it was an election. I'll tell you what, and now they spent all that money, and you know what they did? They handed a lot of it went to the banks and to the pharmaceutical companies. And who's going to pay for it? Poor people will pay for it in the future. Your children and grandchildren will pay for it. And maybe you will. But if we may be made to account for this a lot sooner than people expect, But all kinds of people really got rich over that pandemic. And all kinds of people got destroyed. And the things they plot and plan, the people who make financial instruments are trying to make money for themselves and trying to find ways to extract it from other people. Mostly to extract a little from everybody. That's always like the most, they want to get just a little penny from every person, if possible. Who hasn't done that mental game where they thought like, wow, if I could get 1 million people to just send me $1, I'd have $1 million. And people, I'm talking when I was like a teenager thinking about this. Like, wow, it seems like it shouldn't be that hard. I mean, who wouldn't send $1? We send out 1 million self-addressed stamped envelopes and see how many dollars you get back and how much you'll spend on the envelopes and the stamps. I mean, it's like, how exactly is this going to work? But this did make me think of the subprime mortgage stuff, and also of the, not that I understand. I watched the movie on that and a documentary, and then I forgot about it all because I was like, interesting, but not my thing. I kind of let it slide. But it makes me think of that kind of stuff with the Wall Street and all that, where they are just like. When they short sell, when they do stuff to destroy companies, they short sell stock and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know a lot about it, but there's some greedy stuff going on in the world that is not pleasing to God. Let's just put it that way. And there are a lot of rich people, and this country is rich itself. It's like how many devices have been put into the world in our name? I don't know. Even when the needy speaketh right, regardless of the right or wrong of the needy say, hey, we don't need that, we don't want this, or stop, or whatever. Like that's not going to help. Or they say, oh no, we know better for you, but we don't want we don't want this. We don't want to wear We don't want to. We don't think it's healthy to continually wear masks. We've already had the sickness, and the sickness is. I know it's serious for some people, but it's not serious for the world. The world's a big place. There's like 7 billion people here, and honestly, it was not. The death toll was like, not really, not a big deal. We had a world war last century, 2 of them. And we had a pandemic after the First World War that made this one look like it is a walk in the park compared to it. The overreaction, and all that, it didn't do anything. That's the annoying part, and they still want to do more. And I think it's merely because they want to maintain control and continue to extract wealth from the population. Because they can just keep printing money, and at some point they'll have to collect taxes for it. You understand how that works? They can't just keep, because they'll be in so much debt they won't be able to pay the interest on the national debt, which would cause a collapse, a financial collapse. They must pay that interest. Well, as you keep jacking up the debt, at some point the interest becomes more than the entire gross national product of the country, and you're a bankrupt country. You can't print your way out of problems. It doesn't work. It never has historically. Nations that do this fail. We have absolute churlish, vile leaders. I can't think of a great example of a churl than our leader and than our dear Lord Biden. Biden Dark Winter. Emperor of the Kingdom of Corona, and his vile princely son. I mean, this is who they put in charge. We're in deep trouble because they don't care. Don't care. Don't want to know. Don't care. This is the big cash-in they've been waiting for. Oh boy. Like I said the other day, he has admitted in newspaper headlines. They knew it was illegal. They did it anyways. It's a lawless president. He's lawless. That's all right. Right. I mean, not without any law, I guess. Yeah, but it's like, that's like, we're not going to follow the law. No, not that we don't have a different interpretation, or we're gonna, but we know this is probably illegal. Okay, good. So when I probably do illegal things too, the federal government needs to just stay out. Maybe we should just repeal all the federal laws. I mean, there won't be nothing illegal in the federal level. Close down the federal courts. I don't know. We shouldn't do that, but there is some scaling back of government that should be done, but God knows how you do it. You know. But the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things shall he stand. Someone who's actually liberal, noble, doesn't divide. You know, the vile and the churls. You know, the vile person is liberal because he's permissive, and also because he pushes people towards evil. So that's their idea of liberality and nobility. Well, thank you. Another drink. How noble of you. But a truly liberal person, a person who is noble and magnanimous and beneficent towards others, doesn't devise wicked devices. They devise things that are liberal, that are generous, that are helpful, that are meaningful. And he stands by those things. He stands by his works, the things he's done and the things he's devised. You know, and that's the thing, is like I need to complete the works in my life, because that is not how I gain salvation, because I've already gained salvation through Jesus Christ. That's done. That's finished. He did it. But I want to finish the works, because this is my work in him. I am his workmanship, and this is what he has me do. This is my occupation till he comes. This is the fulfillment of my faith. You know what I mean? Like, I've put my faith in him, and what he has taught me to do, I do. And we devise those things, and on those things, we're going, it says in the thing, not in the thing, but we all got to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And it says there's going to be an altar. And this is just a metaphor as far as I'm concerned, but it could be literal, And on every man's works will be placed on the altar to see what they are, to be tested, to see what it is, to see if they burn, to see what they're made of. Are they made of, to test what kind, are they made of wood, hay, or stubble, or are they made of stone, of gems, of precious things that do not burn? That's the point, is to try the works. It's important for me to do works because I know Jesus is going to judge me based on what he's given me to do. You say, well, Paul, I expected you to do this and this and this. Did you do what you did? And the idea is, hopefully I'll be like, yeah, and I did that and that and that. Not like, oh, well, mostly. I did mostly what, I want to come, like no, yeah. We want to give the Lord his increase. He's an austere man. He reaps where he does not sow. That's not true. It's a joke. Because God definitely sows he reaps from us. He sows. He sows to us. He gives us gifts. But from what we produce with those gifts, see, it's a joke about how it seems like we're the ones responsible for stuff. Look, God, I made a song for you. You know what I mean? But really, I'm only giving him what he gave me. Just like in the talents. I'm making increase with what he gave me, which is expected. I'm not really making anything new. And so it's kind of funny to even say so. Like as if I could bring anything to the Lord that he had not provided for me. But the thing is, but in being productive, though, we show ourselves worthy of the gifts we've been given. And God likes to see that, my thing is, like, when you know the Lord, I expect nothing else. It's like, they're like, oh, what if this and what if that? What if I never this? It's like, the Lord judges you. It's all going to be based on your time, opportunity, and gifts. It's like, it doesn't have anything to do with your salvation, except that if you completely neglect your gifts and stuff, yeah, that can have something to do with your salvation. It can mean that there's some sort of fraud at the very base of it, as far as the way I look at it. As there's not a genuine commitment of faith. That or the fundamental misunderstanding of faith that's a kind of a vile misunderstanding. Because the vile person thinks, like, I just put my faith in Jesus and that's it. And I can do whatever I want. Because I'm, just like, I'm the king's son. I could rape my sister. Nothing's going to happen. I don't know if he even thought that. He probably had no thought at all. Because she tried to tell him and he didn't seem to hear. Well, then we go to the careless women. Okay, but before we go, careless women will be on Monday. Rise up, you women that are at ease. The tongue of the... I didn't say anything about the tongue of the stammers be ready to speak plainly. I didn't really comment on verse 4. I just read it, the heart of the rash, the hasty, and I talked about all the other words we had to check out here. But the idea is that we could be hasty in our hearts and not understanding. A lot of times that's the problem. We don't think fast enough. Like, we act before we have a chance to think things through. We don't have the knowledge to act immediately rightly. And so we act immediately, and it's called rash because we did the wrong thing. I mean, you never call it rash except when they do the wrong thing. Or if you suspect it could have gone wrong. That's kind of like 20/20 hindsight. Often because people are like, oh, that was a very rash thing to do. But it's like, well, but I did it. You think it was rash. I thought it was reasonable. So sometimes there's a bit of a, because I've often said this, there's wisdom in two opposite sayings. There's wisdom in he who hesitates is lost, and look before you leap. One says don't hesitate, the other one says hold on a second. And they're both wise. But they're only wise in their context. They're only wise in their moment. In one moment, hesitation is foolishness. In another moment, hesitation is exactly what you need to do. Hold on, wait, stop. And that's what I'm talking about, the will of God. You tell me you know the will of God to that level? Then, well, let me see you. Let me see you then. I will be so very impressed. I've seen a lot of Christians in my day, but nothing like you. And so, all right, that's the rash. I feel that's a nice little wrap-up of that. And the tongue of the stammerer should be ready to speak plainly. It's easy to, I like, one of the things I like about my mind is it's so very unfair to me. Because if my brain first runs to say, like, this is a good verse if you wanted to argue against tongues. Not a great verse or anything, but it's like, it's got something there. Look at, stammerers should talk plainly. With stammering lips in another tongue, he will speak to this people. People who believe in speaking in tongues will quote that verse. And I'll tell you, I believe in speaking in tongues. Not in speaking in tongues like you should just, like I believe in just everything. Like if anyone speaks in tongues, that's a thing. It's easy to just imitate the tongue speaking. And frankly, other than when I received the Holy Spirit, I never truly spoke in tongues like that again. And at that time, oddly, it was very much more like stammering lips. As far as I was trying to speak, but it was like my lips were forming different words. It wasn't like that. It was literally that. But every time after, because I was part of that church, people were speaking in tongues, I would kind of pray, and I felt weird because I knew it was different. Because when I received the Holy Spirit, I literally felt power on my lips, and they were like moving. It's weird. It was very weird. But it had more in common with stammering than a lot of what people do as far as tongues, when they go bambali, they have actual words and stuff. So as far as stuff that sounds like language. So I don't know sometimes it's very mysterious to me. Because like I said, this isn't something I did or I do. It's something that happened to me. There are things that I did and do, like tongues. Because I don't not speak in tongues. I still sometimes pray and I'll start speaking in tongues. So, but it's not like the first time I received the Holy Spirit is what I'm saying. It's like, because I don't neglect that. I would feel strange to just abandon that. Plus, it feels very comfortable and natural to me sometimes just to not speak English, or to sing not English, And I don't know to what degree that is. When I'm doing that, I'm not thinking this is a miracle. I'm just thinking, my heart is speaking and my lips don't know what to say, like Paul kind of described it like that sometimes, your understanding is unfruitful. Anyways. But it's not really a particularly, it's saying, the eyes will not be dim, the ears will hearken knowledge. Well, and maybe like, in receiving tongues, I stammered. But God will have us speak in tongues and people will understand again, like they did in Acts. And that's what it's saying, is like that if there's any way in which the communication was not understood, you know what I mean? If I'm trying to teach here, and I stumble and stammer, and I'm not as good a teacher as I could be, right? And I'm not as good as I could be. The Lord could help me be better. I could be better already if I'd done more in the past, if traded other things. There were things that I did in the past, I would gladly trade the time back to have spent improving myself in the Word. And in my ability to speak it clearly and plainly. And to not be at a loss. To not be like, what do I say next? Hold on, guys. Let me turn here. Well, I don't have, I would love to be speaking every moment as I'm also moving all this stuff around. And it's like absolutely all just being sewn together beautifully like a tapestry of the Word. And then I'd be a really good teacher. Because if I could stay always on, if I could, even when I'm going on my thing, if I could always make sure I loop back around and not forget what I was talking about, know where the verses are, know where every verse is. Maybe I'd be a better teacher. Maybe now I'm just a stammerer and a stutterer, trying to make people who can't hear understand. Or maybe that's what my words just sound like to them. Blah, 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 blah. Line by line, line by line. Chapter by chapter, blah, 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 blah. Remember we were talking about how in that passage in Isaiah 28, where it talks about precept upon precept, line upon line, zav lakav, blah 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 blah. Like there was some thought that they mimicked the prophet talking, the yakety 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 yak, with this vav lakav, or whatever. I'm sort of butchering the Hebrew there. Ze'er sham, whatever. Precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. And sometimes in so doing, teachers are not perfect. So we can't communicate like we would. Not only is there a problem with hearing, there's a problem with communication. There's a problem with getting the thoughts to people. But God will make, just like it says, your eye shall see your teachers and your ear will hear the words plainly. Okay, so we got to verse 9. So we'll begin on verse 9 on Monday. Thanks for joining me in this study. Look forward to being back again Monday to continue our study in Isaiah.
For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. And he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds will he repay. Fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense, so shall they fear the name of the Lord. From the west in his glory, from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood. The Spirit of the Lord shall raise a standard against him, and the Redeemer shall come.